Welcome to Whispers from Within. I'm your host, Katja Aurora, intuitive healer, space holder, and inner wisdom guide, here to share insights from a lifetime of walking between worlds. This is the sacred space where intuition leads, the soul speaks, and ancient wisdom meets everyday life. In each episode, we explore energy, healing, and the human experience, guided by presence, truth, and laughter. Let's listen in and remember who we really are. I stand in the light of truth and love, whole, sovereign, and free. Only what serves the highest good may enter this space, all else dissolves into light. Every word, sound, and silence shared here is carried in clarity, purity, and love. May each listener receive exactly what serves their highest evolution in perfect timing and perfect resonance. This field is sealed, protected, and blessed, and so it is. Welcome, everyone. It's been a while, hasn't it? If you've been following me on this podcast and beyond, you've kind of noticed I've been silent for quite some time. I can't even tell you how many weeks, months it has been. And I come to you today because there is something to share that is in my field right now and now ready to be spoken about. It's taken me a while, as it usually does. It goes through my system first and then I can speak about it. Um, and yeah, so this theme that I have for you today is grief. Grief as the doorway to expansion. And before we begin, let's just settle in for a moment. I invite you to just take a moment and a breath together to maybe tune into your heart space in this moment. Take a deep breath into the heart. And as you breathe out through the mouth and allow your system to release anything that can go right now, that you no longer need to carry and hold on to. Okay, so why am I wanting to speak about grief? I think I have mentioned this in a previous podcast, in one or two previous podcasts before, that I have a dog, and my dog is currently in the phase of leaving this plane. And he has been like that for a while. I will tell you a little bit of that about the story and how it came to that. But that is why I'm speaking about it today. I have gone through initiation after initiation through this and have now kind of found the words to explain what has happened with me. I am no longer the same person that last spoke to you. And you won't be the same either. We are changing so quickly these days. So I wanted to speak about this because grief is often something that we see as something we need to overcome, rather than actually seeing it as a doorway into expansion. This is what it's been for me. And it's not the first time that I've gone through grief, by no means. And I'm sure that you've experienced grief in one way or another in your life as well. And there's always more to learn, isn't there? So for me, it transpired that in this phase that I find myself in right now, grief is a portal. It's a portal. It's part of life. Everybody that is alive on this planet has experienced or is experiencing grief in one way or another. It is very hard to avoid that. And purely because of that alone, it is an initiatory force. It's a force that you can use to expand with. And this is what I want to talk about today. Maybe to inspire you to look at places where you've grieved or are grieving right now and the way that you're dealing with it in your life. So maybe I can inspire you to come with me on this journey. And for me, it's certainly not over yet, still very much in the process. But yeah, what I want to share with you might help you a little bit along the way. And I want to talk about this because I just backtrack a little bit to put you in the picture here. Jasper, my dog, has been with me now for more than 12 years. He's come to me when he was 5 months old. He came from France. It was an accident litter from a friend of a friend, and they had what, 6 or 7 puppies, and one of my friends got one of them, and I visited her, and it was the initiation into being acquainted with the litter, and then also having a connection, a telepathic connection with the puppy that wanted to come to me. From that moment on, I haven't met him. He just connected with me instantly, and that was the beginning of our connection. Now, I have to also say, if you believe in that, I'm just going to mention it here because it is the full story. He has been my dog in my teenage years as well. It was Felix, and he had the same eyes, and he had certain behavior that was the same. And this is how I recognized that it was the same soul coming back to me in a different body. So yeah, Jasper was 5 months old when we met, and he has been with me since then. And that was in 2014, I believe. So it's been quite a journey together. And yeah, I always knew that obviously at some point, we're coming to the time when he has to say goodbye. And so that wasn't news. That was obviously written in the whole course of nature of things. But it was surprising to me when it came so suddenly. I knew that he had a growth in his tummy for a while, and I now know what the growth was about or is about as well. I won't go into too much detail here because that's not relevant. But in September last year, exactly on the date that my first podcast episode came out, Jasper had a downward turn where I was meant to give a group session in the evening, and I had to cancel that because he took a downward turn and I needed to see vets urgently. So I took him to the emergency care because it was already out of hours. And they told me that really realistically I should put him down straight away because he had a really big growth in his tummy and he wouldn't survive a week, and it would be cruel to keep him alive with this big thing in his tummy that causes him pain. I was 40 minutes from home, so practically it was not possible for me to put him down there. I wouldn't have done that in the first place. So I decided against that advice, was devastated hearing those news. I knew he had the growth and I was expecting to be told that he had the growth, but I wasn't ready to hear that he needed to be put down. It was quite harsh, really, and the way that that was put to me was very harsh as well, but that was all part of the plan, part of the story. So we went back home and I prepared for his death there and then. In the next 3 days, he became very lethargic. He stopped eating the next day. He stopped drinking the following day. And he went into, a time when he was almost just lying down, not moving very much, maybe going out once a day and only a few meters, not very far, just to relieve himself and then come back in. So it was very much looking like he was going. And I created a sacred space for him, like I do with everything that important. I make a ceremony out of them. So I created that ceremonial space, put candles on, made a nest for him, was purely with him in presence, didn't distract myself, was there. I went through grief in that moment, and I was getting ready to say goodbye. And at that time, I was really attached to him. So it was very hard for me to actually allow myself to completely let go and let him go, because it was time. And I was ready by the third day where he was like that. He was only lying in one spot, occasionally stirring and moving and changing position. I was ready so we had the emergency care on the Tuesday evening. By Friday, I was ready to let him go. I was ready. Yeah, I said to him, you can go now. I'm okay. And it's your time. So I said goodbye to him. I was expecting him to die in the night. And the following morning, he nudged me and wanted to go out. And he then continued to roam the field that we have at our back door as if nothing ever happened. And I thought, okay, maybe this is the last hurrah, as so often happens, where there's another spurt of energy suddenly coming out before they then leave. And I was waiting for him to go back into this lethargy and leaving his body. That didn't happen. So from September, I was in this state of anticipating his death. And now we have March, and he's still here with me. We have since gone through a number of times of the same thing, where he almost died, but never quite died. And so I've shed a lot of layers and a lot of different things where we're still holding on in different ways. But I won't go too much into that process. I just wanted you to hear that story of my navigation with Jasper's journey. And I'm in awe looking at him, marveling at his strength of bouncing back every single time until now and overcoming the odds in the most miraculous way, where I would not have expected that to be the case. And he's survived almost 6 months after he had the prognosis of dying. So yeah, so that's that story. Let me come back to the grief now. So as you already know, grief happens in waves. It comes in waves. It's not linear. It's often very unexpected when the wave comes in. It can also feel like spirals. And I now see these things as spirals. This is what this process has kind of taught me. I can see the spirals, and I can also see when, and this happens for humans and for animals, especially pets. We know, I'm sure that happens for every living being, but there is something that I call the death spiral that somebody or some being enters when they are on the transition, in their transition to leave the physical form that they're inhabiting. And the death spiral is a downward spiral. It goes down while the spirit of that being is going up. So the body goes down, that death spiral is well in the body more than it is, the spirit never dies. That's immortal. So the spirit goes up and the death spiral brings the body towards the ground. It's like that kind of picture. And I can see that. I can feel that death spiral, and I can also see it now, which I could never do. This has happened through this process. And I can almost see now when Jasper is in a death spiral, and he's been in and out of death spirals since that first time on the 30th of September. So you can come in and out of that as well. Doesn't mean that when you're in a death spiral that's the end of it. You can actually choose to come out of it again. And I'm sure that Jasper also timeline jumped, but that's another story for another podcast. let's go back to the grief. So it's a death spiral. And when we go through the grief phases, that is also a spiral. So the spirals of something can go deeper and can go lighter. So you can go down and you can go up in the spiral. And with grief, it's often when we least expect it. When we hear somebody say a word or a sentence, or when we see something, it might spark a wave of grief. And if you've ever gone through grief, you know exactly what I'm talking about here. And to notice here that each wave of those grief waves is not regression. It's not that you are going back again. It is actually the spiral of the grief deepening. And there is a beauty and a gift in it that we get to a little bit later on. So when grief returns, something deeper is ready to be felt. So every time that spiral comes back, or you're feeling the next wave of grief, it's actually going deeper if you let it. So it's not something where you regress in any way. It is going deeper. And most of us feel that when we go through those waves. Yeah, if we are in grief, sometimes this small moment of that wave in that moment opens up a much larger emotional field. It can connect us with grief we have not fully expressed in the past, even in a past lifetime. So it can feel like the floodgates are opening when we grieve something that's currently happening in our lives, and it amplifies something where we haven't properly allowed that grieving process in the past. So we're actually not just grieving what is happening right now, we're grieving everything else as well, which is sometimes why the wave of grief can feel really intense and unexplainable. So that's what happens. So it's a portal into the past. And it doesn't have to be the past. Lifetimes are parallel. They don't necessarily are the past, but you can tap into that. So it can unlock suppressed grief in you. And this is not too much emotion. The release is happening through a doorway that you're opening with the grief. And so the awareness of that is inviting your allowance, your permission to let it happen, to not shut that doorway when it's presenting itself. Because when you do that, the next time you grieve won't be as. And so the question I want to ask you here is, what if the grief you feel today is not only about today? So it might make you think of other times when grief was not allowed to fully be processed. Might have been subconscious, might have been consciously suppressed, but it doesn't matter. You can use the grief that you're feeling now, if you're in a grieving space, to process what you haven't processed before. So that might be quite a healing experience. In society, we often hear that we have to overcome grief, that grief should end at some point. But if you have ever felt grief, you know also that grief doesn't disappear. It doesn't disappear. You will always grieve in a way, but it transforms slightly. It doesn't stay the same. It transforms in its process. And it becomes part of you. It becomes a part of your being, a part of your spiral, because you as a being are a spiral, and it becomes part of you. It informs your field. So we do not ever get over grief like society wants us to believe or wants us to see it. We actually grow around it and through it. And this is why I've called this podcast Doorway to Expansion, because through this processing of grief, we're expanding, we're growing if we let ourselves grow. So you can, in a way, see grief as an initiation. Like I said at the beginning, we can use this as an initiation and see it that way. So it's not just the loss that you experience with the grief. It is a threshold, almost like a rebirth of identity, because you are in effect letting something go, which makes you a different person. And that also means that when something goes, another door opens. So you are also inviting something new in. Even if it's not you that's dying, that process still happens to you when you are grieving for whatever you are grieving, right? So the questions that you can ask yourself are, what part of me is dying through this grief? And what part of me is being born? So again, it's a reframing here, making this field of grief a much more potent field with awareness of going through that process with consciousness. Grief dissolves identities and reveals something deeper beneath them. This is what the initiation is, right? And at that moment of when we're in that process of grieving, there's another thing that happens, because it also can sometimes feel older than this moment. And when it does that, not only are you tapping into other times where you might have suppressed the grief, you might also tap into ancestral echoes of grief. What I mean by that is that you carry the imprints of your lineage in your DNA. And as you're grieving, as that process is going through you, you are activating, or you can activate some of those times in your lineage, in your ancestry, that were not fully processed, where the grief is still in your DNA. And that then gives permission for that to be released. So again, it can feel more than your fair share of the grief. It might feel much more potent than just yours alone. And that is because you might actually tap into an ancestral grieving thing that you hadn't noticed before. And that's a good thing, because you're processing something for your lineage. That means it comes out and it comes to light and is processed once and for all for your lineage, and then doesn't have to be passed on. Because if we don't process something and we keep it locked inside for whatever reason, it's stored in the DNA and is passed on to the next generation. But if you process it through your system and it comes out of your DNA, it's being released and cleared, it doesn't have to be passed on anymore. So that's a beautiful thing. So you can actually process unfinished emotional spirals within the family line if you feel inclined. And if that's present, it's often, when grief is really overwhelming, when it really envelops you completely, it often has that kind of echo from the ancestral line in it. So you can ask yourself the question, whose breath am I grieving here? Is this me, or is this somebody else's from my lineage? You don't have to answer that. You don't have to know the answer, but you will know if this is yours or if it's something else. And if it's something else, it's often from that lineage. And that's all you need to know. There's not much else you need to know about this. Sometimes you get more information if you're linked in properly, but you don't need to. It's fine just to know that it's not just your own wave of grief that you're processing there. So it also can then bring in compassion for the ancestry, and it can kind of release something ancient that was always striving to be released in the first place. So again, there's a healing potential in that as well. There is a lovely saying by Rumi which says, grief can be the garden of compassion. What I mean by what this means, or what I mean by that, it's it's that grief can soften us if we let it. It can soften us. It can open our hearts. It can also close our hearts if we don't let it be there. That would go against nature. If we close our heart through grief, that is the opposite of naturalness, which is not bad. It is just a choice, right? Sometimes it's a subconscious choice if it feels too overwhelming to go through the grief in the first place. But when we allow grief to flow through us, it can open the heart and it can deepen empathy as well. So it can be this fertilizer for deeper love to grow within us if we let it, if we're ready for that. That requires a little bit of courage because you really need to dive into the grief. You need to let it be there and be present with it. And that can be a beautiful thing. It's not a bad thing per se. So when we are, this is for all those of you that might be caring for somebody in your life or some pet in your life, like I am. It's a pet. It's not a person per se, but it is still caring. And for me, many times in this half a year that I've gone through this process, it was felt like I was like 24 hours. I was caring for him, and I needed to cancel appointments and be there for him completely because he needed that level of presence from me. So it definitely has this element of caring for him. And it was particularly challenging because he's a dog. He can't speak. He can't tell me what's wrong with him. So I had to be very mindful and had to tune in deeply in order to know what to do and how to help him, how to be with what was presenting itself in his field and mine at any given time. So if I had stayed attached to him as I was at the beginning, I was really not ready to let him go. First thing, it was a shock to my system that he was that far in his journey that he was ready to go. I didn't anticipate that so early. I kind of knew, okay, he might be 12, 13 when he leaves me, and he's just turned 12 when that happened. And so for me, that was a shock. It wasn't anticipated. And I had to process that first and then had to allow myself to fully let go, which was quite something. Um, Even in my aware state, it was quite something to let go of that attachment. But I managed it and I was fully ready to let him go by the third day, as I said to you before. So we want when we care for someone, if we have an attachment for them to stay with us, we're kind of there's a chain then. There's an attachment that is not healthy necessarily. And it would be helpful if that can be released in some shape or form, because that makes you free and the person or the being that you're caring for free as well. And that is a better way of holding space for them while you're going through that process of caring for them. So sometimes when we are in that deep connection with somebody or some being, like a pet, the instinct is to fix or heal them. That might not be for for the highest good. That might not be what actually wants to happen. So the true space holding here would mean that we don't have an attachment to the outcome, but we can just purely be there in neutrality without having an attachment to the outcome. And allowing that soul its own journey. no matter how that looks, what that looks like. Letting them be free in their decision of how they want to live or die. That's a lot to ask. It's a lot to process. That would be the most in alignment thing to do, shall we say. It's not always easy to do that. And there's no judgment if you can't, but that's something that you might want to take in consideration at least and try to get to. So you can love deeply while letting go completely, right? Love is not unconditional love, doesn't hold, doesn't age, doesn't need anything. Unconditional love lets everything that you love be free. You want the best for them. That's the place you want to come from. And that's the place that you can best hold space for somebody or some being that you are caring for. So you welcome them to stay as long as it serves them, not you. Right? And so healing might not be the path in that moment. Healing might not be part of that journey because they might have chosen to leave through whatever is happening to them. And I can just share this with you because I tried to help Jasper. My first instinct was to help him with my healing abilities. But what I noticed when I tuned into that, when I started trying to heal him, he came in and he said, no. If you're in tune, you can feel if somebody allows you to heal them or not. And when it's around a human being, it is very, very, very important at this stage to tell you you should never try to heal somebody without their permission, because that is going beyond boundaries. You should always ask for permission. They're happy for you to heal, then that's fine. But if they're not, please don't do it. Now, with pets, that's a slightly different story because they don't speak, right? So you can't really ask for permission in the usual sense. But I always go and check, and Jasper stops me. So if he's not willing to let me do something, because there's a purpose for his whatever he's processing through the body, then he stops me. He tells me, I don't want healing right now, so leave me alone. He leaves the room sometimes as well. So if that's the case and I'm in tune with that, I stop the healing because it's not my place to interfere with his decision. Even if I wanted to, because I love him and I want him to be fine, if he doesn't want it, it's not my place to do that, right? So I have to respect it. So sometimes there's actually a reason for something to happen, and it's okay not to heal something, right? There is another thing, I think I've mentioned this in another podcast as well. Who says the pain someone feels must be removed? Who's come up with that idea? It's our own uncomfortableness with being in pain that makes us think we need to remove the pain in another person, right? But what if that pain at the end of life is the last time they can actually process something properly that they weren't able to in their lifetime? So it's the question to let them process what needs to be processed in their system without interfering if they don't want it. So even the pain that somebody feels in that time might have a meaning. It might have a perfect timing. It might have a purpose within the soul's journey. And who are we to decide otherwise? Right? So you want to double check with that person, with that being, if they actually want help in the first place. And if they do, fair enough, you can go ahead. But if they don't, let them be. Let them be. Be there, but don't interfere with their process. That's holding space. And again, there's no attachment to the outcome. in that way. And another really important bit about caring for some other being is to take care of yourself while that's happening. This was a big one for me because at the beginning, when we went through that 3 days, I was so engrossed in that process that I forgot to take care of myself. Not deliberately. I didn't make a choice there, really. I was just really present with him, with Jasper. So I forgot to eat. I forgot to wash myself. I just didn't do it because it was so precious to spend the moments with Jasper than to waste time, so to speak, with other menial tasks. I had really lovely friends that gave me food, and that reminded me, oh, actually, my body needs food because otherwise I cannot care for the being I love. And they, the beings that we care for, want us to be nourished. They want us to be cared for when we're caring for them. They don't like to see us in distress. So they want us to take care of ourselves. And this is another message that we often forget when we're in that process, so deeply engrossed in that process. So it's really important to not collapse because we've forgotten to feed ourselves, or we've forgotten to sleep, or we've forgotten something else. It's important that we sustain our own spirals, our own systems as we care for the other being. And that can go in tandem. So when they sleep, use the time to maybe sleep as well, or to get some food, or to get washed, or whatever else you need in that moment. It honors that relationship to that being as well. It stabilizes the field because if you're the carer, if you are not functioning, then nothing is functioning, and you can't care for that being if you're not sustained, right? So it's important to stabilize the field this way. And it also allows you to remain present because if you don't feed yourself, at some point you will be so weak that you can't stay present. And that's really important in that process. So, yeah, moving on. When we grieve, there's a few things that we can take in consideration here as well. For me, it was a huge opening. I am no longer, I've already said that, I'm no longer the person I used to be in September. I'm completely changed now. And that is due to the process that I went through with Jasper. It's the breathing through the grief. And I have to say here as well, because often we don't allow the grief to express itself. If we're sitting with the person we are caring for, or with the being that we're caring for, we often swallow the grief, or we stop the breathing and hold the breath because the grief is overwhelming in the background, and we don't want that being to notice that we're grieving. Now, when we disrupt the breath, we're stopping the spiral from moving through us, and we can really get that grief stuck in us, which is not a healthy process. It's not really wanted in this way. So it's important to keep the breath moving. And it's important to be true as well. So when you express your grief in the presence of that being, it's not a problem. They know you're grieving. It's in the room. It's the elephant in the room. So when you express it openly, it's better for both of you. Again, it's just a perception that, we need to hide this. We don't need to hide it. We can actually process it. And as we're processing it, it shows the being that we can cope with the grief. That is what it's showing. So when you're breathing through the grief, and I've had this many times in these 6 months almost, I had this so many times. So when the wave of grief hits me, I stay with my breath. My breath is my anchor through the process. So I keep the rhythm of breathing going, but I equally also, it can be really intense. It's usually tears, it usually is, I feel it really, really deeply in my heart. And I usually need to make a sound. I need to let it out in some way. And so I make sounds. In Irish tradition, some call it keening. It's the cry of, the grief that is going through you. And that's what I have. So when the wave of grief hits me, this is what I'm going through. I'm breathing through those deep feelings, and I need to make the sounds so that I can release it properly and let it flow through me completely. So I'm not holding on to anything. I'm just letting it out. And as I'm doing this, Jasper's in the room with me. He knows I'm going through this. And at the beginning, he wasn't sure I could hold this because I wasn't sure yet. Um, I didn't know the process yet. So he was he was very much watching me going through the process, wanting to um, make me feel good. Like that's often what pets do. They come and sit with you and lick you, and they want to give you some grace as you're going through the process. But as I was going through that, I became better and better at letting it flow through me, and I could stay with the grieving but also be present with Jasper at the same time. And I was telling him I was fine because I was on one level, and then I was grieving in the wave. And it was happening both at the same time. So I was holding that space, and he could see that I was coming out of the wave as well, unscathed, right? Absolutely fine. And so every time that repeated itself in a different way, he actually trusted me that I was okay to go through that. And there's breathing techniques that you can use here. I often just free flow in those moments because that wailing, that's what it sounds like, wants its own expression often for me, but you can make it a pattern. If that's easier for you to follow, then you can breathe in a pattern as well and let the grief express through that pattern. One of those patterns is a 4-4-8-4 breath, which is inhaling for 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 8, and pausing for 4. And you can try this on. If you're going through grief, this would be a good one. So you can count yourself through the breath. And as you do so, you can even record yourself counting yourself through. And then the grief can flow through you while you're breathing. As long as the breath keeps going, you're processing the grief. If you hold your breath, or if you stop the breathing and you stop the grieving wave, that's when it gets stuck. That's when it then has to be processed another time because you haven't finished that process. It gets stuck. That's when it's suppressed. So that is then stuck in your system until another time comes where you grieve again. That is those suppressed things that can amplify when you open that grieving space again. And then you might grieve more than you need to because you've suppressed something in the past. So let it go. Let it flow through you. Let it be the river of the breath through your system. Move through it instead of stagnating it in your system. I want to mention something else here as well, which really helped me through the process, and that is nature. Nature is so often really beneficial when it comes to processing something, and especially for grief, because nature holds it so effortlessly. Everything is coming and going in nature all the time. So there is a celebration of the demise and the new as well. You can see that in the flowers. You can see that when spring comes, and then also when autumn comes and everything is dying. This is the same. It's the same kind of process. And you can work with the elements in nature as well that might help you letting things flow in their own way when you see it, how it's happening in nature. So when you look at water, like a stream or a river, or even a lake, that's fine as well. When you look at water, it might actually help you to let this wave of grief flow through you. Even like when it's raining, it might be helpful for you to let the tears flow much easier, because when it's raining, it's that imitation of the tears. Or when you buy a river and you see it flowing, just listening to the sound of that can also induce tears or the grief to flow through you. So water becomes a mirror of that emotional release in a way, and it can help you to be in nature, close to a water body of some sort, or in the rain, to let that grief flow through you without judgment. Right? Nature doesn't judge grief. Nature just is and lets it flow, and you can take that on as well. So yeah, nature doesn't absorb it, it transforms it. It just lets it flow. And that can happen to you as you're in nature processing that grief. For me, that was often the case when I go out with Jasper, when we take a walk, and he's just walking in front of me, and I watch him, and I am aware that I'm creating memories, and I'm really taking in the moment. And sometimes that hits me like, like another wave of grief, because moment doesn't return, and the walks will end at some point because he won't be with me anymore. So I take that moment and notice that he's there still with me. And I take that and have that memory. And I also let the grief wave flow through me as I'm seeing him walk there with me. So nature can help me processing that. The walking itself, just the walking, um, is flow as well. So that can help processing grief as well, because you're not static, you're actually walking, and that can help that process. So there's a little bit of a paradox in grief. It can hold two things in one. You can feel joy and grief at the same time. And this is what happens to me when I walk and I create those memories. I'm joyful about that. And at the same time, I'm also grieving that it might be the last time, because I never know if it's the last time or not. But I make the moment count. And that's the most important thing. If I'm present with it and I'm really taking it in, and I'm not actually taking any pictures on my phone necessarily, because if I do that, the phone has the memory, not me. If I watch him and I am fully present with him, that memory is stored in my brain. If I take out my phone and I take a picture, memory is not in my brain, that's in my phone. So my phone then holds the memory, and that's not always the best thing. If you can mix and match it, absolutely, but I wouldn't recommend just using the phone to take your pictures. Take the pictures with your eyes, with your mind, and let them be ingrained in your memory bank. That is a very healthy thing to do. Please don't forget that we have a brain to memorize things, not just the phone. So, yeah, going back to that. So, grief and joy can exist together. This is one of the deepest truths. So, grief does not cancel out beauty or joy. You can celebrate that being's life, because, yeah, there's always something to celebrate if somebody leaves, especially if you have that time, if you know that they're going. That's such a beautiful thing, because you can prepare your system and theirs for that change, for that rite of passage. And so, you can really go into that celebration of their life in a way, which often is not possible when we are surprised by death, right? But even then, if that person is already gone, or that being is already gone, you can still celebrate their life. You can be joyful for the times you've had, for the gifts they've brought into your life, for the memories they've given you, you know. So that can all exist at the same time. And so it's not, it's not a bad thing to just hold grief by itself. It can actually exist with other things. So it can be a moment of laughter. It can be a moment of profound gratitude or deep love. So usually when I go through my waves of grief, I feel that at the end. So when or maybe even alongside it, like in that process, I feel that love. I feel how my heart was breaking a few times from the grief. But at the end of that grief process, of that wave going through me, my heart was wider. It was more open. It could hold more love and more gratitude for the moment. So that's what I mean, that it's a doorway into expansion. It expands those feelings if you let it. Yeah, I hope that that makes sense. So grief and joy are not opposites. They can be companions in this process. So give yourself permission to feel all of it. We are multidimensional beings. We can hold more than one emotion in one space. And this is what we're now practicing. So this is the invitation here as well. Hold it all. It's okay to have it all. You do not need to just grieve. You can celebrate as well. Because death is only just a transition. It's not the end. The beings are immortal. They don't finish with death. All it is, they're just leaving a body behind. Like a suit that they've carried for a while, that's no longer fitting them. They're just leaving that body behind, and the body goes back to the earth, the spirit goes back to where it came from. And it might come back again, right? Very often does. So it's only a transition. It's a rite of passage. And a rite of passage for us as a witness to that, right? Because we are becoming somebody different in the process. Something that was dear to us is leaving our space and the physicality and is becoming something else. Now, the connection to that being might still stay with us. So I know that Jasper's choosing to become a guide for me. He will be in my field still on the other side. So I will still be very much in contact with him. I just can't cuddle him anymore. That is what I'm grieving. That is what my body is grieving, because that touch, that physical touch, that physical connection, that won't be there anymore. And this is what the grief is for. I'm not grieving that he's gone, because he's not, he's there. But I'm grieving that I no longer have the ability to touch him in this physical body. For the moment, at least, when he comes back again, then that might be a different story. And there's a very great possibility that he will. So, yeah, the question is, can we actually celebrate the life that is waning? Can we celebrate what was happening for that person, for that being? Can we honor that life that is changing, the transition that is happening? Honor that life that they've led and celebrate what was given there. It doesn't diminish the grief, right? That doesn't diminish the grief, but it expands the heart to hold both. And this is where the expansion happens. You're expanding your field, you're expanding your capacity to hold things. And this is what I feel now. I feel so much more expanded through it. I feel so much more stable through it as well. My breath is much deeper because I've allowed myself to breathe through the grief. And that was huge. That was so huge for me. So I invite you to experiment with that as well. If you're in a grieving process and you allow yourself to really fully go there, not losing yourself in the grief, witnessing your grief, observing yourself through the grief, but also really deeply feeling it and then coming out the other side, not with that intention initially. So you're only just being present with the grief without any attachment to any outcome whatsoever. But usually when you do that, you come out the other side and you feel much more expanded afterwards. And then you feel gratitude as well, or deeper love, or something else. So, I'm kind of getting to the end of this now. I want to make you aware, if you haven't been already, that there's a gift in grief. And you can ask it, what gift has this grief given me that nothing else could have given me? And for me, it was a process of discovering how strong I am, and that I don't need Jasper to hold something that he used to hold for me, because I'm now ready to hold it myself, which is why he's ready to leave the space, because he no longer needs to do that for me. So there can be epiphanies through that process as well that might help you grow even further than just expressing the grief. And for me, that was the case. I noticed, okay, he has been the masculine for me for a long time. And he no longer needs to do that, because I can hold the masculine in my own system now. I don't need a physical being as such to do that for me. So I've become much more whole in myself, and I'm stable even through the waves of grief now. I am ready for that moment when he leaves his body. And I'm not even fearing that, or not even afraid of that. I have a neutrality now in my system, that in any moment I am ready to be present with him through that transition, whenever that will be. And I love every moment that he stays with me. And I also recognize and accept that at some point he will go, and I will be ready then. I will be there with him. I'm going to breathe through it with him, and I can let him go. And I know he will be fine, and he will enjoy it much more as well, because he knows I will be fine. He's seen me go through it. He knows I can take it. And that makes him so much more ready for this transition as well, because he doesn't have to worry about me. Because often that is something that keeps beings stuck in their body, because they're worried about us. So you can actually alleviate that worry if you show them that you can cope with whatever happens. Sometimes it's a lot to take. You don't have to be perfect. I just invite you to experiment with it. We don't have to be perfect, but we can try our best, or we can be present with what is. And if we need help, we can obviously ask for help as well. And I certainly am really grateful for the people that have been there through the process with me, where they were reminding me of needing to take care of me. And they did for a while, and I didn't. And then, yeah, I now, if there's a spurt where Jasper's not feeling well, and I have nights where I can't sleep properly, I will take time to nap during the day, regardless of whether he needs me or not. There will be moments when I can just allow myself to sleep, because I need the sleep. And if he were to die in that moment, that would be fine as well. So that's where I am at now. It's a really neutral process. I'm completely unattached to what is happening, but it's a beautiful, beautiful process. And I'm really, really grateful for it all, because it's taught me so much, but I wasn't able to put it into words until now. It's been a long process, and it's not finished yet. I'm still very much in it, but I wanted to share it with you, because it might help you process grief and caring for somebody in a different way, maybe, and open you up to take it on in a deeper way than you have so far. So my final encouragement here is, maybe write down what you're going through, journal around it, if that's your way of processing, or speak it aloud. I often, when I walk, I speak things through, and I can hear myself, and that helps me process things. Or you can sit with the grief, with the questions, with pondering over the process. You can sit with that as well. So grief is not the end of the spiral. Grief is a transition. It's helping us to turn inwards to then expand again. That's what grief does. It turns us inwards. And if we breathe through it, it turns into expansion. And this is what I wanted to bring to your awareness, so that you can allow that process to happen, and not contract or disrupt the process and get it stagnated in your system. And if it has, take the next moment of opportunity to go through that process in this way, and see how it makes you feel when you do that. I want to close with a few words here. But the spiral continues regardless of the body. right? That being continues to be regardless of the transformation and the transition. The memories remain. So that memory and the breath line, this is the memory of everything that was and is, that remains. And even within grief, life keeps expanding. It can be an expansion if you let it. So with that, I leave you. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions for me, let me know. And I will keep you updated, but I will also say I will ride the waves as they come. And I might not have another podcast for you for a while. I will just be very present in the moment and see what wants to be shared and what wants to just keep silent. Because that's what it wanted to be. It wanted to be silent for a while until I was clear in myself. And I will ride those waves continuously. And whenever the next time is that I share again, I hope that you take good care of yourself in these tumultuous times. And I speak to you soon. Take care. Bye bye.
Thank you for joining me on this journey inwards. May the whispers you heard today echo into your daily life, gently guiding, healing, and reminding you of who you truly are. If this episode stirred something in your heart, I invite you to follow, share, or leave a review. It helps the medicine reach those who need it most. And if you feel called to go deeper, connect with me. Until next time, stay rooted, stay open, and keep listening to the whispers from within.